So my name is JB Minter. I am the Director of Animal Health at the North Carolina Zoo.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hello. Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. So, y'all, this week we have a very cool, very exciting guest coming to you from the North Carolina Zoo. This is one of two episodes in a row that I'm going to be dropping from the North Carolina Zoo, and this is with we're just going to call it what it is, a bit of an internet celebrity, Dr. J.B. Minter, who runs up the animal health department at the zoo. And what a cool guy. I was so excited to sit and talk to JB. So actually, this goes back to, I've talked to JB about being on the podcast before. We connected briefly at the AAZV conference last year, and I was hoping to snag him, and it just didn't work out. But when I was able to get back to the North Carolina Zoo, he was available. And so I got to go and talk to him and do a tour of the Animal Health Center, and it was just a really good time. And I'm excited to share the interview with you now. I do have to say, there's one part of this that if you listen to all of the episodes might sound a little confusing. And that is because I say that the episode that dropped before this, we talk about a salamander breeding program that they have at the North Carolina Zoo. And if you've been paying attention, you know that we didn't do that yet. And the reason why is that I was talking to some people today. I'm recording this on Monday before dropping this for Tuesday. And I was talking to some people, and they were veterinary related people. And I was saying that today's episode was going to feature Dr. Minter because everyone knows JB. He's awesome. And I was just excited about it. And I completely forgot that my original plan was to drop this next week and to this week drop the other episode that I recorded at the North Carolina Zoo. But since I had said that this episode was coming out tomorrow to people today, I was like, I'll just drop this episode. And then we got to that part and I was like, this is silly. And I could have edited it. I could have cut that part out or whatever. But honestly, I think it's really interesting and makes a really interesting point. So when you get to that and you hear me say, now listeners, you know that last week we talked about, just know that it's really, hey, listeners, next week you're going to hear all about this cool program. And it really is a really cool program. I loved my time at the North Carolina Zoo this time because last time we sat and we talked to keepers and we talked about training and all that good kind of stuff, which, all stuff that I adore. But this time I did 2 interviews covering 3 guests, covering completely different parts of the zoo. And I love when I'm able to get to a facility a couple of times and really show all the different sides of the facility. And so, we'll be talking conservation work at the North Carolina Zoo next week. But this week, it is all about the veterinary services there and about some in situ conservation and veterinary work that Dr. Minter does, which I just think is very cool. So, there's a lot in this one. It's meaty. It's juicy. I like it. We also talk about the fact that Dr. Minter has become a bit of a social media star. And kind of our feelings about that whole influencer life thing. If y'all listen, you know that I like to talk to people about that because I find it weird. So real quick, before we get to the interview, don't forget to make sure that you hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of this or Zoo News. Make sure that you are following along at Rossifari on the socials, at Rossifari Pod on TikTok. And if you're interested in supporting the podcast, you can do so for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. So with all of that said, here is my interview with Dr. J.B. Minter of the North Carolina Zoo.
just, the director of animal health here, but also a social media sensation.
Yeah, that's taken off in the last couple of years. That all actually started when the marketing department here at the zoo was like, hey, we're getting a lot of requests for these things, more footage about the zoo and the veterinary department. What are you guys are doing? Would you mind doing this? And I was like, yeah, I don't know how to do that. So they ended up connecting me with somebody else in our social media department, and she kind of gave me a tutorial, and these are the things you should do. Talk to me about hashtags. These are things I did not understand. I did not do a lot of that. So yeah, and it's kind of blown up quite a bit.
It really has, yeah. And I'm actually very curious. I personally have a really unique relationship with social media. I don't like it, but it is essential, and I do think it's a great conservation communication tool. So, I'm on the Rossifari social media stuff all the time, but have let all my own personal stuff basically die off because one is enough, one brand, so to speak. I'm curious what your take has been of it, especially kind of coming into it, I won't say against your will, but against your will.
Very similar to what you just said. A lot of the stuff that I was doing personally has slipped. I don't think my personal Instagram page, I probably haven't posted on it in 6 to 8 months. My Facebook page, I have a young daughter, so it's one way to share images and things with my parents that are not in this area. So I occasionally will post there, but it's still nowhere near. I mean, I'm posting on Instagram for the zoo 5-6 times a week.
Yeah.
And that, like you said, that takes up enough of my energy and effort that the other parts have just slipped.
So I have to ask this, and I'm not, this is because I have this problem. I'm not picking on you because it's totally going to sound like I'm picking on you. But you are a doctor. Mm-hmm. You are a person who is really, really good at figuring out how to do incredible things with animals that sometimes we don't understand very well, and to deal with emergencies. And I mean, I have the utmost respect for vets. How frustrated do you get when, you try to edit a video and it doesn't work? Do you have these issues where you're like, I am a doctor, why can't I do this?
Yes, but I have also now watched enough things about posting and running the social media that a lot of them are now saying it doesn't have to be perfect. Just do it. People want to see the content. They don't. And I have found that some of the ones that I put out in 10 seconds get more traction than things that I've tailored and tried to really make really, really nicely. So I just go with it.
Yeah, that's good.
I have several people, close friends of mine, that will send me, hey, you misspelled this word. You did this wrong. This is not right. And I'll go in and edit it and do a few back edits. But again, when the footage is out there, you're not really changing it.
Yeah, no, that's good.
So yeah, I've given up. I've loosened up a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it out there, let people see. Because what I'm doing is just pulling the curtain back, and letting people see. I mean, a lot of obviously we did Secrets of the Zoo, North Carolina. So that kind of did that similar thing, but this is just a continuation of that. And I show some really graphic things.
You do?
And people say, I get the comments, oh, you shouldn't have done that. And it's like, you know what you know what this account is about. Yeah. You know what I'm going to show you. If you don't want to see that, you probably should unfriend me.
Yeah, no, that's very real, and that's cool. I'm glad. I actually had a similar thing when I first started the podcast. I was an over editor, and I didn't know that. I just wanted to make, and I didn't care about myself that much. I wanted to make my guests sound like everybody was the most brilliant person. No one ever said y'all didn't even breathe on my podcast. I would go out and pull out, breaths sometimes.
Deep breaths.
Yeah, right. And people were like, why is your podcast so sterilized? And also, I make a bunch of dumb dad jokes and puns in my regular life, and people were like, also, where did you go? And I was like, oh, okay. And so now we breathe, and we say and I'll edit things, if somebody really misspeaks or something, or if I can help you out. But I usually won't even do that for myself now, because whatever, I'm here speaking for 3 hours today. Yeah. Odds are I'm going to mispronounce something.
Of course.
Yeah, that's okay.
It is okay. So, and that's, it makes you human. Mm-hmm. And that's what people want. I think that's the connection that you're trying to make with people, is to make them realize that I'm just like anybody else. Yep, I went to a lot of school. I did a lot more of that thing and moved in that general direction. But I'm just a normal person. I'm sitting next to you in the restaurant eating. We're doing the same things. I go home. I'm tired. I deal with the 4-year-old. I deal with the same things that everybody else is dealing with. Just I come to work and I do some crazy things at work.
Yeah, no, makes sense, and I think that's very cool. I'm really glad that social media and podcasting and all of that has kind of gone in that direction, because the search for perfection is just not real.
Yeah, it's futile.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. And I'm curious. You mentioned though that it does create that authenticity and kind of connection a little bit. Do you ever have the experience of somebody that you have never seen, never met, never heard, who knows you now from the show, what is that like for you? Because that's my world now too, and it is cool and weird all at once.
It's in this town, it happens a lot more frequently, and oftentimes it's little kids.
Oh, that's amazing!
It's the little kids, and they won't come up to you. They'll just stare at you from a distance, and you're just like, I mean, it's a little creepy to begin with. I'm not going to lie, but now that it happens frequently enough that I actually wave to them, and you can see them turn to their parent and say, and they'll tell their mom or dad that's so and so, and they'll whisper. You can see them whispering, and then I will approach. Once that happens, I oftentimes approach. Again, it makes the kids day.
No, that's really cool.
Now it's happened further away from this town. It's happened in Raleigh, which is an hour and a half away from here. Still not that big of a deal. It's North Carolina. It's expected. When you get out of state, it gets a little weird because you don't expect it. You're not expecting that thing. People will come up to you. I've had people come up to me on an airplane and say, "Hey, are you that doctor in the TV show?" And I was like, and I'll say, yes, I am. And then the conversations branch out from there. But yeah, it happens in this area a lot more commonly than elsewhere. The TV show it was only one season.
Right.
I mean, I've got colleagues that are in some of the other ones that are happening, and they get recognized a little bit more frequently than me. I don't know if you know Priya very well.
I know Priya. I love Priya, and everybody sees Priya, and it's like, it's Priya.
Yeah. So I don't get that. Right. But I'm bald. I'm a little bit more. I'm pretty recognizable, but yeah, it happens.
That's funny. Yeah, I was at Greensboro yesterday, and I've done a lot with the Greensboro Science Center, and I'm pretty well known there. And one of the docents, I guess, has started listening. Hi, Pam. I know you're listening to this right now, so I'll just say hi. And it was so funny because she looked at me, started to look away, and her head snapped around so fast. And I am not an egotistical person at all, but I wanted to play, but I was like, I don't really know who this person. I just wanted to look at her and be like, yes, I am him. But I didn't. I was a good boy. And we actually had an amazing conversation for like 40 minutes.
It would be even funny if you were like, no, I think you're mistaking me. That's not me. But yeah, it's cute. And again, I really like it with the kids because I like connecting with the kids, right. And that is kind of fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, I could tell you some weird stories too. We've talked about some on the podcast, but that's not actually what we're here to talk about today. I find it so weird because I feel like all of us that do this thing, there's not like, I don't know, I hate the word influencer, but we have enough followers and there aren't influencer cons.
Yeah.
So we don't get around much and talk about this very often with each other. No. And it's you're just in your own world. I had this video go the most viral of me playing drums with an elephant and then the elephant playing drums with me. And it was cool. Amazing. And this was up at Buttonwood Park Zoo. And it has been seen on various different channels by more people than the last 2 Super Bowls combined. We're talking hundreds of millions of views. It's
very
crazy.
Cool.
And not only would I have not expected that to happen, but as it was happening, I was on a walk in the woods with my wife and our dogs, and my phone was exploding so much I thought something was wrong, and that's when it started going viral. And I was walking in the woods.
Yeah,
a thing I had done a couple weeks before that.
Yep.
Went viral, and I was walking in the woods, and Questlove was sharing a video of me playing drums with an elephant, and Justin Timberlake was liking it, and I was like, I'm throwing a stick for my dog. And that's just a hard thing to explain to people that haven't been there, So I always like to talk about it a little bit because it's so trippy.
It is. I mean, the first time someone reaches out to you and because obviously people start DMing you and let's do this. And I'm like, no, I don't, this is beyond what I want to do. So yeah, it's it's something I do. It's part of my job. Now everybody, again, I get a lot of, oh, you're the influencer, you're the vet. And I'm like, yes, but no, all at the same time.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's interesting. Cool. All right. So let's talk about the actual, I guess, work you do here.
Okay.
Like outside of social media.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's a very small part of what I do every day.
Yes, no, of course. Actually, tell me before we get to here, like how you got here. What was your journey? Did you always know you wanted to be a vet? All that good stuff.
Growing up, when I was very young, I thought I wanted to work for National Geographic.
No.
And as a kid, you read the National Geographic magazines, you think the people that are in those magazines work for National Geographic. Come to realize later in life, that is not the true story. Working for National Geographic, you're a photographer, or you're a writer. The people that they're interviewing are the researchers. They're out there in the field doing those types of things. I assumed that the people that work at National Geographic got to go do all those fun things that are in the magazine cover.
Oh, interesting.
I was very young.
Yeah.
Come to realize that was not the case. Obviously, I had a fondness for animals most of my young life. I was not the one that was kissing salamanders at a young age, but I was the one that was collecting turtles out of the ditches and the lakes and bringing them home to my mother and saying, hey, I found this, can I keep it? And my mother, also having a fondness for animals, encouraged that, except for snakes.
Okay.
She's petrified of snakes, so I was not allowed to keep a snake. I did find an eastern glass lizard when I was probably about 10, 11 years old, and brought it into the house. It was a lizard. I had done my research. Obviously, this was long before Google. I wasn't Googling anything, but I had all the books. I had encyclopedias and all different types of identification guides. So my mom comes in the house and she sees this legless lizard, and she's like, what is that? No snakes in the house. And then I had to basically break out all of these books and say, lizard has eyelids, it has this, and has this. It just doesn't have any legs. And she gave in.
Amazing.
She was like, okay, well, you explain this away. You can have this. So obviously being a young child, you're thinking, okay, what people that work with animals, they're veterinarians. So had that want to be a veterinarian at that point. Went to undergraduate, continued that process, wanting to be a veterinarian, volunteers as an assistant at a small animal clinic. In undergraduate, I was an animal science major, so at that point I was working with more your domesticated livestock and horses and chickens and cows and goats and pigs. But then I started taking some classes in the wildlife department, and I got to go out and help with a couple different projects there. And I was like, oh, this wildlife thing is really cool. So I did the thing that came natural. I applied to vet school, and I got in. I went at Virginia Tech, and young and stupid and cocky, I was like, well, if I can get in once, I can get in again. So me and a buddy went to Europe.
Oh, wow.
Did the whole backpacking through Europe for 4 months.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I'll just put it off. I'll figure something out. I got back from that trip, and obviously I didn't have any money before I left. I had put a lot of things on credit cards. We worked. This was a long time ago. So we worked under the table, made a little bit of money while we were there, got back, actually moved down to Costa Rica for a month to surf.
Okay, so we were a responsible person.
Yeah, no, we were not a responsible person whatsoever. Got back from that, and then I decided to move to Utah. Went to graduate school there. Okay. And I was like, well, let's test that. Maybe I want to do a PhD. I was kind of flipping between a DVM, PhD. Did a master's degree. My advisor there he had a PhD and a DVM, and told me after I'd finished, he's like, don't do this. Don't do PhD. Go do a DVM. He's like, and you should go to North Carolina. You'll be a more marketable individual with a veterinary degree than you will with a PhD. He's like, I have PhD students that are currently baristas because there's no jobs available for them. Now, again, this was a long time ago. So I moved to North Carolina, went to vet school. Kind of followed that path, did an internship, and then circled back around, did a residency. My first job out of the residency was at the Great Plains Zoo in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Great place.
So, yeah, I mean, it was a little chilly.
Yeah.
Chilly. And then my mentor, I did my residency here at the North Carolina Zoo and NC State. And one of my mentors, Dr. Ryan DeVoe, was leaving the North Carolina Zoo. He was going down to Disney Animal Kingdom and said, "Hey, I'm leaving. I know you have a fondness for the zoo. Just want to let you know that there's going to be a position available." So I applied, got the associate vet position, came back to North Carolina. Several years later, my other mentor, Dr. Michael Loomis, was retiring, and I stepped into his role.
Okay.
And here I am today.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. It's interesting that you were so driven to do the thing, and then you drove off course a little, took a little detour.
Took a little detour.
Yeah, but then got right back to it. That's
Yeah.
kind of cool. I dig that.
Yeah, it was, again, I now look back and I did things that I probably couldn't do now.
Right.
Like, you can't walk away from life for 4 months now. And that was something I was able to do then. And it honestly shaped me quite a bit. Because again, to me, travel is one of those things that opens up your eyes to a lot of things. Getting out of your own backyard really will open your eyes. Now, obviously, it's Western Europe. So it's similar, but different all at the same time. So yeah, it was an experience I don't think I could emulate now.
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
Hi, this is Kathy Hill from the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. We're all about restoration projects in progress this season on One Lagoon, One Voice. Learn about the great strides the lagoon community is taking to restore and protect the Indian River Lagoon. Each week, we dive deep into discussions with scientists, resource managers, and nonprofit leaders to explore lagoon issues and solutions. From oyster reefs to clam restoration, algae blooms to muck, you'll learn all about the projects we're tackling to bring the Indian River Lagoon back to health. Click the link in the show notes to follow One Lagoon, One Voice, learn about the IRL Council, and explore our unique lagoon.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. My best friend and I, we love each other dearly. We see the world very differently. It's amazing that through all of that, we have stayed best friends for, 20 plus years. And he is very big on get the highest paying job, don't care if you love it or hate it, and make as much money as you can and, save up. And then when he's older, retire a little bit younger and go and see the world. And I spend all of my time touring around, obviously that's my job as a musician. I love touring, but also traveling. And I care more about seeing the world now when I'm younger and able to do the thing. And then when I'm older, I won't just be joining those group trips where you
big
all go.
Tour.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to do a Viking cruise?
I'm weirdly not, no. And so and it's fine. He's happy with his path. I'm happy with mine. But whenever we talk about it, I'm just like, oh man, to me, it's like doing the thing when you can is the best thing to do.
And that's kind of the decision that actually my best friend and I were the ones that did it, and we're still best friends today. And again, it's probably one of the better experiences that I've ever had in my entire life.
It's awesome. Very cool.
So again, it's great.
Yeah. So let's talk about what your current position is here.
Okay.
And I'm curious, I guess the first thing I'm curious about is now that you are the head muckety muck, I think was the official title.
Grand Poobah is what I'd like to be called.
Nice. I like it. Yes. Are you still hands-on doing a lot of vet work?
Less, for sure.
How do you feel about that?
It took me a little bit of time to get used to that. I'm getting more. I still dabble. Okay. I'm able to go see clinics. The good thing is that me and my associates are pretty well connected. We round in the afternoon. Just even if I don't see clinics for a week and a half, we're talking every afternoon so that I'm up to date on all the cases. But they do most of the work now. We still train residents here. I still take an active role in making sure our residents are well trained. And again, the good thing about being the Grand Poobah is that if there's a really cool, fun thing coming up, I can step in when I want to. I also like to make sure that I have connections with the curators and the supervisors. So even if I'm not actually seeing the animal, I may step into the room. I may be there to engage with the animal care staff, just so that we're still connected, so that we still have that relationship. And again, I can kind of oversee things. A lot of times I'm there to play safety officer to some degree, make sure that the procedure is going smoothly. If things go wrong and they make a hard left when they're not supposed to be, I can be there to assist if necessary.
That's cool. That's very cool. And what is the makeup of your team right now?
So the team is changing. So currently there is myself and I have 2 associate veterinarians. I have a veterinary registrar who's also a licensed technician.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. So she can step in if there's if we're down a staff member, which we're currently down to, so she can step in and assist. She has a lot of that knowledge, so that if for working with medical records or entering data, she doesn't have to come ask me like, what does this mean? She understands what that means. If we're fully staffed, we have 5 licensed technicians in the hospital. One of those acts as a hospital manager. And then we have, like I said, 4 other technicians that will work in the roles of being medical, which means they're assisting the veterinarians. We also have a fully functional laboratory, so we're doing in-house CBCs and chemistries, fecals, cytologies, urinalysis, all kind of in the hospital, so they can fill into that role. And they can also assist with quarantine or animal care, like if we have got something in the hospital or something in quarantine. We have an animal keeper, so we have a hospital keeper. And then the North Carolina Zoo also has a fully functional and wildlife rehabilitation center. So we see all native wildlife in North Carolina except for your rabies vectors. We don't do skunks, we don't do foxes, we don't do coyotes and raccoons, but we see everything else. Everything from your little songbirds and your opossums and your squirrels all the way up to North American river otters and black bears. So that team sits over there. There's 2 full-time staff members over there. They have 3 temporary staff members and then a cadre of interns and volunteers that make sure that center is up and running. Now, with the expansion of Asia, we're going to be expanding a little bit more. So we're going to get some more technical staff and the support staff into the hospital. The North Carolina Zoo is also hopefully to be hiring its first nutritionist.
Oh, that's cool.
Hopefully this year.
Okay.
So currently we have a commissary manager that manages ordering and things. That most of the nutritional decisions are made by the veterinary staff. But we're going to be hiring a nutritionist to help assist and run the commissary.
Nice. That's very exciting. Very cool.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Asia expansion, I know I've already talked to the PR team. I'll be back. We're gonna do something with that. But I noticed red pandas aren't on the list.
I know they're not.
What's going on? Come on.
They were. I will tell you. They initially there was chat about them. They were on the list. Our neighbor, Greensboro Science Center, has red
They have
panda.
so many they could just give you some right now. I know that's not how this works, but they could.
So trying to do, obviously we're close enough trying to do things that are a little bit different makes sense. Obviously we can't get away from not doing tigers.
Right.
You're going to open Asia, you should have tigers.
Yeah.
So doing something a little bit differently. I've also seen that maybe this far south, red pandas, this is not an ideal situation for red pandas. You'll talk to different people and latitudes on where red pandas are really good. Obviously coming from their home location, North Carolina in the summer, it gets real hot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So doing things a little bit differently. So the tigers will be, and we're obviously not going to get the big Amur tigers, which again, gets hot here.
Yeah.
So we'll probably get a Southeast Asian tiger.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, cool. I can let it slide, I guess. Okay. Yeah, all right. No, I'm excited to see this expansion. I really
Me too.
Cannot wait. I guess what I would love to do at this point is just I love vets. I think vet work is amazing. Literally, I'm married to one. So, so I would love for you to just share maybe a story, a case, a super interesting case, or a recent case, or I don't know, pick a case.
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
What if I told you scientists discovered 100 new species in the deep ocean?
Why did crocodiles survive extinction?
Megalodon. How did it go extinct?
Hey, it's me, Forrest Galante, wildlife biologist. You might know me from Joe Rogan's podcast or my various TV shows like Extinct or Alive and Shark Week. Join me and my friends as we dive into the wild world of animal anomalies and everything wildlife. Don't miss out. Click here to uncover these mind-blowing animal mysteries.
Depends. Do you want me to get gross? Do you want me to get crazy?
Gross. Love gross.
So excuse me for your younger audience. So this is the case. I love to tell this case because it is one of the craziest things that has happened. We have a troop of Hamadryas baboons. So when I say a troop, it's not like a group of 5. It's a multi-male group, multiple harems, which means this is a more natural environment for them. This is how they live in the wild. Basically, one male will have several females, and there'll be multiple males. And then when they want a new female, they fight. And then if the winner gets it, they may potentially take another female from that. So end of the day, it's like 4:30 in the afternoon, and we get a call. Hey, we need you to come down to baboon. That is not an uncommon call. That is a common call. The baboon troop has come in, and when they come in, that's when they notice injuries. We need you to come down. We think a baboon has had his penis ripped off.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I sent the associate down. I was like, go take a quick peek. We're going to get set up in case, like, we can either need to come to you or the baboon can come to us. So I went in with the techs, and we were setting the hospital up and getting ready for a procedure, anesthetize a baboon late in the evening. And I get a phone call from the associate, and she's like, yeah, it looks bad. I was like, well, see if you can get him in a crate. Let's get him down here. Baboon comes down in a crate, hand inject him. He's anesthetized. We pull him out of the crate. We get him intubated. While they're getting him intubated and hooked up to anesthesia monitoring, I'm looking between his legs, and it does appear that his penis is mostly gone. But on closer examination, when I wash some of the blood and look away, it's been fully degloved. So to give you an explanation of how that, think about your finger. Think about all the skin around your finger being ripped off.
Oh, man.
The finger's still there,
right?
But all the skin has been removed. But it wasn't removed. It was still hanging on at the tip, what you call the glans penis. So basically, it's completely been rolled down like a sock. Give you a really good description of how that sounds. And the skin was there, and the keepers and the supervisor were looking at me like, what are we going to do about this? I was like, well, this is the best case scenario. I didn't know what we were going to do if he had lost it. Right. That was going to be the real concern, but it's still there. So I was like, baboons, if you know anything about baboons, they are miraculous healers.
Yes. Yeah.
They heal quickly. It's almost like they're superhuman strength or superhuman like healing capability.
Right.
So I was like, well, let's clean it up. So I had a resident here. Her name was Dr. Westmoreland. She's now one of the veterinarians at the North Carolina Aquariums.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, Lori, clean this up. So Lori washed it all up and cleaned it. We cleaned it and got all the, because it was covered in dirt and debris and like, it was just bad. So we cleaned it all up. And I was like, was it all there? And she rolled it back up like a sock. And it was all there.
Oh my God.
And I was like, well, let's just stitch it back in place. Let's just stitch it there. So she put a couple sutures around and stitched it all back to where it was. And I was like, let's see what happens. It's got a bandage. It may heal relatively quickly, may do really well. And we recovered him. Obviously, you're not going to put an e-collar on a baboon.
Right.
Just take it off. And in 7 days, and I get a text message, hey, we saw that baboon, he's breeding.
That's insane.
So 2 weeks later, anesthetized him again, completely healed. He had already groomed all the sutures out. Sutures were gone, but completely healed. And I see him, the baboon is still alive. Every time he comes down for an annual, still looks really good. But yeah, that to me is one of the craziest things. And I tell that story and people just like, their eyes get exactly like yours. They get as wide as saucers and go, what? And I was like, yeah, that kind of happened. So yeah, there's some crazy stuff that happens. You never know what to expect. One day it's very calm and collected. And the next day you're like, your eyes just get wide. And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Because again, oftentimes we don't know what we're doing.
Right.
We're winging it.
Well, and that's something that I find so amazing about vet med, especially in zoos, is that, we don't understand so much of these species. Yeah. And this is something that I was just, for those of you listening, the week before this, we will have done an interview about the salamander reproduction. That was a large part of it. And we understand so much about how that works and what needs to be done because that is like a conservation effort. And I was amazed at how deep and specific that knowledge was. And as they were talking about it, all I could think about was we have this amazing understanding of the different species of salamanders and how they work. Some of them, we still don't know at all and are figuring it out.
I mean, we're still finding salamanders, brand new species.
Right, yeah. And that's the thing. Like in the last 2 weeks, I've reported on at least 5 different new species being discovered of different animals. And there's so much we don't know. And it all ties back into every time I talk about this, I have to give a shout out to the Wild Animal Health Fund because they are helping, people research and find out what we don't know yet. But as a vet, you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I guess my biggest question about that is not like anything real deep, but it's psychological in that it's like, how do you deal with that? Like, as you're looking at it, the sock penis, how do you I don't know, what have you learned to do as a vet to make yourself handle that situation so calmly?
Well, I do think there has to be a personality trait that can accept that, because I definitely know veterinarians, friends, colleagues that could not handle that because they don't know. They get a deep-seated fear and they freeze. But it has to be a common trait amongst zoo veterinarians because the literature is missing giant holes where you're just like, well, I don't know.
Right.
And then you start thinking, I was like, well, what's the closest species related to that one? What do we have information about that I can potentially utilize? Or do you feel comfortable making that jump? Hey, this has never been done in this animal. It's been done in this. Can we try it? And do you feel comfortable trying it? So it is definitely a trait that I think most zoo veterinarians share, that they like that experience of being MacGyver to some degree. So I mean, we just have to wing it sometimes, and that's, you have to be comfortable doing that. You have to be looking at the edge, going, I'm going to step off and just see where it goes. But I definitely know veterinarians that, like in small animal, that could not do that.
Right.
Couldn't do it well.
Right.
So and then that's why I think you have a lot of people that when they hear the term exotics, zoo, they're just like washing their hands. I don't want anything to do with that because I don't know and I don't feel comfortable making those leaps. And you'll get a lot of clinicians that are just like, I don't do exotics. Well, why don't you do them? Why don't you do them? Well, it's because you don't feel comfortable doing them. You could, I mean, just like you didn't feel comfortable doing a tooth extraction at some point in your life, you can get comfortable doing other things. But yeah, I think it's that leap that a lot of people just don't want to make.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I remember I kind of learned that we had a pet chameleon, and it ended up being impacted with eggs and passing away, and we did not. I'm still confused how what we were clearly told was a male chameleon had that happen. But hey, whatever, these things happen. And I remember we took the chameleon to Penn Vet, to their exotics, because they had exotics back then. Yeah. They don't now, which is so sad. The doctor who was doing the thing was speaking to the students and was like, okay, so what should we do here? And they were all like, it's a chameleon. We don't know about chameleons. And she was like, well, what's the research say? And one kid was like, I don't think there's research on chameleons. And I'm sitting there like, oh, bull. There has to be research on chameleons because they're like a pet and they're in all kinds of zoos. And she's like, yeah, no, there's really no research on this. But turtles, and I just remember my brain going, I'm sorry, are you going to treat my chameleon based on a turtle? Because I know turtles and I know chameleons, and they're not the same animal, but there is a lot of research on turtles. Yeah. So you start there and you move on. And that has always stuck with me. Yeah. It's crazy.
You just mentioned the Wild Animal Health Fund. Mm-hmm. And like you said, I'm a big proponent of the Wild Animal Health Fund. And a lot of the research that's coming out of the small grants that they apply, that you can get through them is actually filling in some of those smaller gaps where it's like, well, this is done in turtles. We've got 50 chameleons. Let's try it on 50 chameleons. Let's see if this drug works the same way from a turtle to a chameleon. And what we're finding is a lot of times, no.
Right.
It doesn't. It's not the same. So you have to do that additional research to say, hey, we had been doing this dose for turtle. We've been doing it in chameleons, and it's wrong.
Right. Yeah. No, it's fascinating.
And you gotta keep doing that, and we gotta keep putting out the research, which is a real big thing about our residency program here. We are always working with our residents to publish, do research. We are trying to produce not only clinicians, but clinical scientists. We want our residents to continue to go out there in the world and continue to fill in those gaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is really important. I really love that. I'm curious. So the AAZV has their conference, which is a great place to connect on all of that. And I was covering it this year, and it's a lovely thing. And again, going back to red pandas because they're my favorite animal. One of the things that shocked me the most was one of the research posters there.
Okay.
Was red panda body condition score, because there isn't like an official red panda body condition score. Red pandas are everywhere.
Yeah.
They are a wildly popular animal right now, and we don't even have a body condition scoring system for them until now. Now
my guess is people were going, they look like a dog.
Yeah.
And they were they would use a dog score.
This is so, every time I see it, I'm constantly amazed at how much we don't know. And then, like I said, we also know exactly to the minute what time to properly massage a male salamander to get the spermatophore. Like, it's amazing how deep some of it is and how totally lacking other knowledge is.
Yeah.
It's astonishing to me.
And the only reason they know that about that salamander is because in the last 10 years, there's been just a deep dive on salamander conservation. And to get into that really deeply and to realize what you need to do to conserve these salamanders, all this energy and effort and money has been put into that. Whereas body condition score for red pandas was probably not on someone's high priority list because we're just going to use this dog scoring system.
Right.
Whereas a normal, like, it's always better to have very specific, like red panda body condition scoring. I mean, take, for example, I recently was reviewing something where they were trying to establish a hormone profile in a particular species. And I don't want to get into it because it was a grant that I was reviewing. But somebody asked me, the question was, well, can't they just use this other species, which is very similar? I'm like, probably, but we don't know for sure. So if you're making clinical assessments and clinical judgments off of something that may be slightly different, you may go in a very drastically different clinical direction, which may or may not affect the outcome of your case. So having all of those just basic reference intervals of whatever is hugely important.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Very interesting. So I know that there is no average day because animal emergencies happen, obviously. But this is a huge zoo, like a huge facility. I cannot even believe it's expanding. This is going to be so cool. And, you were mentioning that you have the wildlife rehab and everything. So, like, what is a normal day like for you? But I also know that you're doing the vet thing, but also the administrative side. But I'm like, so just for the hospital in general, what is an average day like?
I say the normal day would start with, we round every morning at 8:15. That's my entire team gets together and we discuss cases that happened the day before. So we want to discuss it that way. Everybody on the team is aware, hey, we did all these things. This is the outcome of those things. This is what we're going to do moving forward with those particular cases. We also talk about the cases that are going to happen that day. So, hey, we've got to go look today. We talked about it. We had a red wolf that needed a bandage change. So the team was said, okay, we're going to be doing this. We also had 2 rhinos that needed annual exams done, and they were going to get vaccinated. They were going to get bled for their blood work. So all of those things were discussed. We discussed amongst the technical team, like who's going to be medical today, who's going to be in the lab, so we can figure out how the schedule. And then the veterinarians talk amongst themselves, and we decide, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do this. We're going to come back together later in the afternoon. We're going to do this together, and then we're going to split back up. We are huge proponents of eating lunch, so we want to make sure that we get lunch because keeping your stomach happy, make sure that you're happy. We generally eat lunch between 12 and 12:30, get about an hour. The afternoons are typically set aside for any type of rechecks. Small, like I just need to run by and take a look at this thing. I've already treated it. I just want to see how it's doing. Sitting down to write medical records. No one ever thinks about how many medical records you have to write at the end of the day. So writing medical records. And then later in the afternoon, that's when we generally see the cases at the Wildlife Center, when the Wildlife Center is up and fully running. Right now it's in the wintertime, so it's pretty slow. And then even later in the afternoon, about 4 o'clock, we sit down, the veterinarians, and we oftentimes will have veterinary students with us or residents, and we will round about all the cases that we're seeing that day. And that's more of a not just updating about what's going on, but hey, you saw a particular case. This is the treatment plan that I've got moving forward. That way I'm aware of it in case the next time it needs to be seen, I see it and you don't see it. Now, my day sprinkle in there, it's, you have a meeting at 2, you have an interview at 10:45, different things. And then there are certain days that there's standing meetings. Like, so the veterinary team always meets with the animal care team, the supervisors and the curators on Wednesday.
Okay.
I always have a senior staff meeting on Wednesday morning. So those are days that always happen. And then the 3 veterinarians, we always have, every week we try to establish an office day where, hey, I got just a lot of things I need to catch up on. I don't do any clinics this day. I'm always off clinics that day. I'm in my office. And all 3 of us have one of those.
Wow. That's actually really impressive. It seems like mental health is a big part of what you're doing, which is so important with vets in particular.
It is hugely important to make sure that the work-life balance is basically being taken care of, because I don't want to work somebody. I mean, we're generally out of here by 5:30, 6 o'clock at the latest, unless there's an emergency. And then obviously the great thing is no one minds standing up and taking part in an emergency. If I'm going to be here till 10 o'clock, no big deal. I don't want me or my team to be worked till 10 o'clock every night.
Right.
So that way, when an emergency happens, we're all ready to step up to bat.
That makes a lot of sense. What, if you don't mind my asking, you have a young child.
I do.
And I'm assuming it wasn't parthenogenesis.
No.
So okay. So what effect does this have on the family?
Me being a veterinarian?
Yeah.
So my wife is also a professional. She's a lawyer.
Okay.
So we both work, and she manages a pretty large nonprofit branch legal department for a refugee resettlement program.
Oh, cool.
But she also has a very good understanding of work-life balance. So I'm generally out of here daughter has to be picked up by 5:45 at the latest. So I'm out of here by 4:30 or 5:30 every day, just to make sure that she gets picked up unless there's an emergency, and then we just switch that around. And then it's family time. I rarely, if I don't have to, take work home. Now there's an occasion when I've got to read something. I've got a paper that's due that I'm reading for a resident, and I'll get the eye. I'm like, "What are you doing working?" But I mean, it's understandable that most days we don't do that. On my weekends off, I don't work. Now my phone is always on. I will answer text messages. I will answer phone calls. But when I'm off, I'm off.
Right. Is that hard? No, so it's kind of almost the opposite question, but I love that. I think that's great. And I think most people in your position would struggle with that. So I did the thing, I hit the mic. I think most people would struggle with that. But I think it's cool that you don't. But then is it hard to leave work at work when you've got a sick, elephant or whatever?
Now, see, those are the things. When I have those really critical patients, I mean, it doesn't mean I don't go home and think about it.
Right.
It's just I try not to do anything about it. Now, if we had a really critical patient, and maybe I've got a critical patient that I'm dealing with that needs pretty intensive care. That week, I may be in work a lot more. I may be, I go home, have dinner, then I'm coming back to take care of something. I may be switching out with a resident or an associate to make sure that that animal has that medical care. But on most days, again, it's just stepping away.
That's awesome.
Because again, there's only so much I can do. If I start to break down, I can't provide the care that's necessary to make sure that those animals are taken care of. So I got to take care of myself just as much as taking care of all the animals in my under my care.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, got to keep you fresh for that Instagram posting. I mean, taking care of animals. Sorry.
Well, the good thing is, like, the Instagram, I rarely have my face on it. I'm like, it's always other people, so I can be like, I don't care how tired I look.
So that's, I find that fascinating. I mean, for those listening, I know I've talked about it on here sometimes before, but the suicide rate amongst veterinarians is sky high. There's an organization called Not One More Vet that is trying to help that problem, and I think they do amazing work, but the numbers aren't great, and so I think it's really cool that you found that,
Well, and I think I do think that we have it a little bit easier because one of the bigger things that we don't have to deal with, so we still have the crushing debt. Obviously, all veterinarians have that. But the other thing that we don't have to deal with the financial, sometimes with the financial gap that you will have. As I did small animal for 1 year before I got into the residency. And when you have that client that comes in that has that pet and they just don't have the finances, I can fix it, but they don't have the finances to fix it. That is hard.
Yes.
That was really hard. When you got this client coming in, it's only going to cost $2,000 and they could fix it. And I have to tell them no, because it's not my clinic. I can't just give away the services. And then they look to you and say, you're heartless. And that's hard. That is real hard, because we don't get into this job because we don't love animals. We don't get into it because we want to crush people's hopes and dreams. But there is a financial responsibility to owning a pet. And the good thing is now with pet insurance that are coming out, with the care credits where you can apply for a particular additional credit to help fund those types of things. But some people just don't get it.
No. I mean, this is my life, because my wife is doing that right now. She wants to do zoo vet, but for right now is that. And both when you said how many records there are, that's astonishing in and of itself. But beyond that, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I hear a story where she's working overnight emergency right now, and a patient will come in and the owner will be like, well, my budget is $150.
Yeah.
And the initial exam fee is $150. And it's like, that means I have zero. And that's hard. And like you said, this is a person who did this job because she loves animals. And I know that's really, it's awesome that you don't have to worry about that, as much as zoos. I know you have budgets.
We have a budget. There is, it's not unlimited, but I don't have to go to the keeper and say, hey, you need to pony up $2,000 for this.
Right.
They just come to me and they say, hey, what can we do? And I'm like, oftentimes for us, it's not, we don't have the money to do it. It's, can you do the post-care? Do we have the knowledge to even attempt to do what we're going to do? But it's oftentimes, they're different questions. It's not as often financial.
Right. Yeah. That is very cool. And I guess I just want to ask at this point if for another story, because I love that stories, and that last one was so cool. And I know you have a bunch. So I think maybe one more of those.
So I'm going to tell you something that's outside of, so obviously some other work that I do. The really good part about what I do is obviously I get to work here, which is great. I work with a great group of people, both within my team and within animal and the other sections of the zoo. But a really fun thing that I get to do within my job is I do a lot of work in West Africa. So I do elephant conservation. And this is a project that I inherited from my mentor, Dr. Mike Loomis. And I started going with him when he was here, and he's now retired, but he continues now. We go together we're now working in Cote d'Ivoire. Initially we were working in Cameroon. But I'm going to tell you the first time, this time I got chased by an elephant.
Oh my gosh.
So Mike, we had gotten up the morning. We generally get up relatively early in the morning before the sun comes up because the parrots are squawking. So we had gotten up. Mike looked at me and said, I don't feel good this morning. I'm going to stay back at camp. You got this. Perfect. So I go out with the team, and we're hiking for miles and miles and miles. We finally catch up to these elephants, and I'm looking, and there's a big bull elephant, and he's with a couple females, but the females are not in position. So we're going to attempt to dart this elephant and collar this bull elephant. So I darted the elephant, and if you've ever seen a projectile like a Dan and Jack dart, it's got a big pink fletch, or the end of the piece is pink. So I see the dart hit the elephant, and I see the pink fall down to the ground. So I looked at Desiree, who is one of our technicians that we've been working with. Mike's been working with for 20 some years. And I said, the elephant got hit, ran. All of them ran away. So I looked at Desiree. I was like, I don't know if the dart stuck. I saw the pink tailpiece fall. We should go look for it briefly before we chase the elephants. So we run up there. It's me, him, and the tracker. We run up to this spot, and we're milling around looking. And all of a sudden, I hear the sounds of the bush opening up. And all of a sudden, this big bull elephant comes barreling back through where we're at.
Oof.
So I get behind a tree that's probably, I don't know, it was a decent sized tree. It was probably 2 foot across. So I get behind this tree, because you're never going to outrun an elephant. So I get behind this tree as this elephant zooms past me, and he's chasing. The tracker runs. Runs. Desiree's behind a tree. The tracker runs. So I've gotten behind this tree. Elephant run past me. I've got the gun in my hand, and I'm standing there waiting to see I'm watching him, trying to see what he's going to do. And all of a sudden, I hear some rattling in the bush behind me, and I turn to look, and there's 2 adult females and their juvenile calf. And they're 20 yards from where I'm standing. Wow. So to one side of this tree is the big bull. Behind me is these other three elephants. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not good.
Yeah.
So I'm watching them, watching him. And now this adult female comes up, and she comes up quite quickly. So I circle around the tree. As she comes around the tree, she reaches around and smacks me with her trunk. I crank the gun up, the pressure on the gun let off a pop, hoping to scare them. That does not deter her. She turns, she's coming around. I'm circling back around, and I'm thinking to myself, if this bull comes up, they're going to kill me. So he comes around, she smacks me again. I make the choice that I got to go. I can't stay here. This is not ideal. So I make a beeline for a bigger tree. And at this point, I'm yelling. We have a ranger with us, and he has a gun. He has a real gun. And I'm telling him, shoot, not her.
Right.
Shoot up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So I start running to the big tree. At this point, probably right before I get to the tree, and the elephant is coming around. I can hear her. He lets off a shot. She turns, the belt turns, everybody runs. I'm up the tree. And again, my heart is like beating out of my chest, because I'm like, I came this close to probably being smushed by an elephant. And climb down out of the tree. We're looking around, and Desiree looks at me. He's like, we got to go find this elephant. He may be drugged. So we take off. And we're running, and again, I can't catch my breath because my heart is beating 90 miles an hour. And we get to a point where it's like, I looked at Desiree, and I'm like, I don't think that drug stuck in. I don't think the dart stuck, because we've gone this far that the elephant should have been down by now. So we end up stopping and taking a quick break. But yeah, wow, a little bit of shock to the system, but I've been chased a few more times, but never that close.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's exciting work. I mean, I love what I do. I mean, that work is really important because of what we're doing in the area. Is we are placing these GPS collars. That information is allowing the Ivorian government to make really good decisions about elephant ecology. Where are the elephants? How are they utilizing the landscape? It also allows them the rangers on the ground, to utilize that information to kind of tell people, hey, elephants are coming towards your village. You need to be out. Mm-hmm. You need to be making some noise. You need to be doing something to discourage the elephants, because if they come through and eat your entire chocolate crop this year, you don't have any money. And if you don't have any money to support your children, buy food, whatnot, that means you probably hate elephants, because they basically just took away your livelihood for the year. And then the next time you see an elephant, you may just take a shot at it instead of trying to discourage it. And then you could care less about elephants. You can care less about elephant conservation. So trying to mitigate some of that human-elephant conflict is hugely important for elephant conservation.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. That is really cool. I'm curious. I've had elephants playfully smack me a little bit. What is a trunk attack like from a I mean, did that hurt? Was that like?
I mean, it smacked me on the side. She bruised my rib.
Okay.
Or she bruised me when she hit me.
All right. Yeah. I kind of had the feeling they could be. I've just, all of them that I've interacted with are,
I've seen
that.
I've seen an elephant give somebody a black eye.
Dang.
I mean, she just comes up. Yeah. Because like sometimes when they just kind of nudge you with the trunk, oh, that's cute. But if they want to, they can, it's like being walloped real hard.
I had the feeling, but I didn't know. That's fascinating. That's very cool. This has been awesome. Is there anything else that you want to say?
I don't think so. I think we're good. I mean, again, it's to me, this is a career that has so many possibilities. I mean, veterinary work in itself, the door my mentor told me best. He's like, go get a DVM because you will be more marketable. And I don't think I realized that the possibilities of what you could do with a DVM after. I mean, I got a lot of that information once I went to vet school, but man, there's so many things you can do. I mean, everybody thinks, oh, veterinarians, you see dogs and cats, or you see livestock, you see cows and horses and sheep and pigs, but you could be stuck in a room just looking at radiographs all day.
Right.
You could never see a live animal again in your entire life and be a pathologist. Again, I don't think those things came to my mind when I was younger, but now I know, and I've opened up the possibilities. And again, I knew when I was thinking I wanted to do that PhD, it was because I wanted to do field work. And I really never thought about veterinarians doing field work.
Right.
And now I know that is a huge possibility, and being in zoo medicine really opened a lot of those doors.
That actually brings up an interesting question. I've seen this thing recently, and I just meant to look it up myself, but hey, you're going to be my Google today. But there's a person, I'm not going to say who it is, but they're an influencer, and they're in the zoo world and not. It's a whole thing. But anyway, they've been saying that it's better to not go to vet school in the United States, because then you can practice veterinary medicine anywhere and like go do conservation work as like a vet and stuff. And my understanding is that you can do that even if you go to one of the U.S. side schools, because Zoe went and did stuff in Namibia for cheetah conservation. And is that just a complete weird thing that is being said for some reason? Because I've heard people ask me about this now, and I'm like...
obviously I went to school in the United States, and I work out of this country. I mean, again, I can't imagine, every country's likely going to have its own rules and regulations about who can practice in that country and what you can do. Now, I don't know if I could go to Cote d'Ivoire and open up a shop looking at dogs and cats.
Right.
There's probably rules and regulations to that. I work with the government, and the government has given me the leeway and the leniency to do what it is that I do. But I'm not going and taking away jobs from Ivorian veterinarians.
Right.
So I don't know. That sounds odd to me. I will say that that doesn't sound right.
Okay, just checking. Cool, thank you. And then we've already talked some gross stuff, but
it's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show, but there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
I was going to say, how do you beat the penis sock story?
I don't know.
I will tell you, let me see if I can think about a really good poop story.
Poop story.
I will tell you a story. This is honestly not veterinary related.
Okay,
it is veterinary related. It's not zoo related.
Okay, great.
I was an intern, and I was a large animal intern. So I went to vet school, and oftentimes after you leave vet school, a lot of people go off and do internships. It's one more year of additional teaching and tutelage. And I didn't want to do a small animal internship. I wanted to do large animal because in my head, I thought, well, if this zoo thing doesn't work out, I'm likely not going to be a small animal veterinarian. I'm going to probably be a large animal veterinarian because I wanted to travel around in the truck. I wanted to be outside. So I decided to do a large animal internship at the University of Illinois. And I went out to go look at these cattle, and I'm sitting there, and I arrive on the scene, and the guy comes to me. He's like, hey, my cow's prolapsed her uterus. And I was like, okay. I had never seen a prolapsed uterus in a cow. And he's like, I need you to come out and look at it. So we walk back into the barn, and this cow is laying on the ground, and her uterus is probably 2 foot out the back end of her. And I'm looking at it going, my eyes just get real wide and saucer-like, and I'm looking at, and I have a student with me. I'm a first-year intern. There's no senior clinician with me. It's just me and this student. And I'm going, you ever seen one of these? She looks at me and goes, no, I've never done this. So I'm like, well, I know what to do. So I went back to the truck. I got a bunch of sugar, and I dumped it on this, all over this. And then I said, oh, did you bring the gloves? I'm thinking like big rectal gloves. And she's like, yeah, there are none in the truck. And I'm going, oh man, this is not going to be a good day, is it? And so I didn't have any gloves, which was horrible. So good thing it was not cold. So I went in, again, you're in large animals, so there's no scrub sink. So I'm in this guy's, and I've got a garden hose, and I'm washing my arms all up, and I go back out to this cow, and we washed the uterus and got all the dirt and debris off of it. We put a trash bag underneath, put all the sugar on it to try to get some of the edema out of it. And now I'm like elbow deep in the back of this cow, no gloves on, just shoving this cow's uterus back into place. And I had been taught a trick, and I had never done it, but I had been taught a trick that, hey, if you have a Pepsi bottle, you can shove it into place of where when you re-involute the uterus, you can push this Pepsi bottle up in there and get the horns back into where they're at. So I'm doing all this, and I'm shoving this uterus back, and and I had done a block, but she's like, uterus keeps coming, like I'm pushing it, keeps coming back around, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, am I sure I want to do this career? But I'm pushing it in there. It gets better. So like I said, the cow's on the ground. I'm elbow deep. She takes a big poop. I'm lucky it didn't get in my mouth, but it went all down my chest. And now she's got a poopy uterus. And I'm just like, oh God, what is going on here? So my student went and got a hose, and we hosed everything back off, and I'm just like, and I finally got everything back in there, and I'm holding it in there, and I'm like, I've got the student, and she's going to put in a stitch to close everything up just to keep everything contained. But yeah, I walked away from that just with uterine fluid all over me and cow poop all over me, and it was a day.
That's amazing.
It was a day.
That is amazing. One quick question, just because you mentioned it very briefly, but can you explain the sugar thing? Because that was almost the weirdest part of that to me.
So obviously, if you've got something that it's outside, if you've got something that's very edematous, so that uterus came out and it became, circulation wasn't really good and had a lot of edema. If you put sugar on stuff like that, or a prolapse, if you've ever seen, you may not have ever seen this, but like a frog, if it prolapses part of its cloaca, if you put sugar on it, the sugar will suck. It acts as a hypertonic solution, basically solute, and pulls moisture, pulls fluid out of that tissue. So it shrinks the tissue down, the sugar, because the sugar is pulling that stuff out. And then you can hopefully push it back in real fast and get it closed up.
That's amazing.
So,
I did not know that. Yeah, I had you're saying all this other crazy stuff, but in my mind, I'm like,
why's the sugar there?
I mean,
and honestly, and then he was like, why was there sugar in your truck? But yeah, there was a bag of sugar and 4 exactly that, and 2 Pepsi bottles that my mentor just kept in the back of the truck.
That's amazing. Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, you're
to do
very
this.
welcome.
It's been great.
All right, so there you have it, folks. Dr. J.B. Minter of the North Carolina Zoo. What an awesome, awesome time talking to him. And their hospital is really cool. Got to see some really neat stuff and really watch JB nerd out about some of the stuff there, which is kind of my favorite. I don't know if y'all know that, but I tend to nerd out from time to time, and I like it when people nerd out. I know, you're shocked. Anyway, I would like to take a moment to say thank you to all of my patrons, especially my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, and Jenny Owens. And I would like to remind y'all to make sure that you're back here on Friday for Rossifari Zoo News, and hey, the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.